Hey guys, don't forget to check out my book by the same name as the podcast, The Gospel of Fire. It is on Amazon. So just go on Amazon.com, The Gospel of Fire, or you can just simply search my name as well, Eliot Marshall, and it will pop up. You can buy the Kindle version or the paperback version. I appreciate the support, and it just kind of goes up in about my life a little bit as a memoir-ish to self-help-ish type book, but check it out. Leave a review if you so choose and you find it helpful or unhelpful, either way. So Amazon.com and then search The Gospel of Fire. Guys, the podcast is also brought to you by Onnit, ONNIT, Human Optimization Company. Again, code word Eliot is the code word for your order on Onnit. You will receive 10% off. Again, ONNIT, all kinds of stuff for human optimization. They have supplements. They have the Total Human. They have all kinds of stuff. Alpha Brain. I love me some Alpha Brain every once in a while when I know I got to sit down, get some work done. The brain just kicks in a little bit. I've enjoyed using the Shroom Tech Sport. It gives that little extra boost when I'm getting ready to go do a workout. So again, ONNIT, code word Eliot, and you will receive 10% off your order. Guys, this podcast is being brought to you by Evo Labs. Evo Labs is a cannabis company who has some of the best CBD products on the market. I really enjoy all their CBD products. They have an intense salve that is my favorite product, where deals with muscle soreness. You rub it on your muscles. You rub it on your body after a shower, and really helps relieve the soreness. The other CBD products, all kinds of different ones that you can intake or use, some for sleeping, some for stress and anxiety. Anyway, evolabs.com, go check them out, and you type in the code word FIRE and you will receive 10% off your order. evolabs.com. Ever have sore, beat up fingers after jiu-jitsu? We all have, right? Ever wish there was a better way to ice them down than sticking your fingers in a cup of ice water? Well, now there is. Penguin Fingers. Invented by a jiu-jitsu black belt, Penguin Fingers remove the soreness from your fingers or your toes in just minutes, allowing you to train harder and longer with less damage to your digits. Chronic inflammation is like sand in your joints. Training day in and day out with sore, irritated fingers can leave them arthritic and knobby. Penguin Fingers can stop all of that before it ever starts. Penguin Fingers non-toxic, reusable individual finger ice packs come in boxes of 1, 2, or 4 soft gel sleeves. Simply keep them in your freezer and roll them out onto sore fingers or toes as they're needed. Available on Amazon or at penguinfingers.com. Fingers are life tools. Protect them. Use code 10THEFIRE and you will receive 10% off at checkout. Again, 10THEFIRE for 10% off at checkout at penguinfingers.com. Hey guys, this is former UFC fighter Eliot Marshall, and this is The Gospel of Fire, where we're going to go through the fire to learn how to live the best life possible. What's up, guys? So I'm going to do like a double intro. I'm going to do a little talking before the podcast, I guess I would say, and then I'll get into the intro for the podcast for this episode. I had a great experience today. So sometimes, like with all that we do, and like, or I should say, with a lot of the things that I do, and I'm not going to say I do them well. I'm a human being. I fuck up in my delivery often. I overstep. I go too far. I'm not always cautious of my audience. And then also combined with the growth of our schools, the Easton schools, man, it's been a lot of dealing with big problems lately, and with tough conversations and all kinds of stuff. And sometimes I get to this point, or I was getting to this point where I'm like, man, what the fuck? Is this really worth it? You know, is all of this that I'm taking on really worth it? Like, you know, I could just like sit back, teach, do what keep the schools, you know, where they are, and not try to grow anymore. No more, none of that. And which is, you know, and just kind of ride it out, and it's not even ride it out. I'll still go. I'm going to go in and teach all the time. I love teaching. I love doing all that. And that will never change. But we did have this goal, and I do have this goal to change the world through, you know, one person at a time, one academy at a time, one class at a time. And I fuck it up all the time, as I said earlier. So, you know, but it weighs on you, you know, it weighs on you sometimes, and you're wondering if it's all worth it. And I was in my Whole Foods today, and a family that, mom and dad that have been with us since their kids were very young, and now their kids are grown. One, I think they both actually work for me. I know the daughter does. And the mom, you know, we see each other often in Whole Foods, and the mom and I started talking, hello, blah blah blah, you know, just chitter chat, and then she just asked me, if I knew what Pure O was, and Pure O is what's called pure OCD, and I was so if you want to go look that up, go look that up. I verge on Pure O. I might have it. I'm not sure if I do or not, but she does, is what she told me. And, you know, she was, you know, we were just like talking about how we both kind of mitigate our stuff. And like, I'm pretty close to Pure. Like I said, I don't think I have it, but, you know, and then she got to this point where she said, hey, you know, I found a therapist, and, that really was specialized in Pure O, but I was having panic attacks while driving, and this therapist was 40 minutes away from me. So I couldn't get to my therapist because I'd have a panic attack. And then she's like, but then, you know, like, you started your podcast, and there was just something about your podcast that like would snap me out of my anxiety for 15, 20, 30 minutes. And it would get me to my therapist, and I'm doing better now. And fuck, man, you know. And then she continued with some stories about her family, where she was talking about this time, like, you know, so this time period lasted 4 years for her. This deep anxiety, struggling with the Pure O. And she was just talking about some of the things for her family, and she has a child who had a bad speech impediment, and she was just telling one of the stories where he'd never spoken publicly before in his class, in anywhere. And, you know, he's in jiu-jitsu class with one of the instructors, and they're doing this thing like where you put your feet together and flap them like a butterfly. And you know, we asked the little kids, hey, where are you going to fly to today? And, you know, he's never spoken in public before. And all of a sudden she sees him raise his hand, and she goes, oh my God, like her heart drops because her little boy here is going to mumble some incomprehensible stuff out, and then be ridiculed probably, and this is about to go so badly. And he does it, blah, 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 you know, she said, and the teacher just rolled with it. He's like, yeah, man, that's where we're all gonna go today. And like the kid, like her little boy now actually like felt good about what he said. And like, this is all just like through the schools, and you know, we taught him, and, you know, there's a rough period with not a rough period, but like sometimes, you know, parenting, like it's hard to teach your kids. And she was explaining where her husband and the son, like they were bickering or whatever. And like, you know, like and my CEO, Mike, taught him how to ride a bike, but he didn't know how to ride a bike. And just like this whole thing. And like, I almost cried because I was like, God damn, right at that moment where I was like reaching my breaking point a little bit with handling just absolute and utter bullshit, you know, or what I deemed bullshit, let's say. There it was. And she's like, whatever you do, just keep doing what you're doing personally. Keep spreading the message. Keep doing what you guys are doing at the school. I can't thank you enough. Like you guys were the backbone. You guys were the rock for my family to live on. And that's worth more than all the bullshit in the world. So, we got to keep going. We got to keep going. Every time for me, every time I that's going to be my motivation for a long time. Every time I think about is this worth it? Is this blah, blah, blah? Because man, let me tell you, I don't see any money for this thing. I don't know if I'm trying to see any money. I lose on this. Definitely. I have to pay to edit and all that stuff. So I lose on this, but I don't lose on this. My bank account might go down a little bit, but goddamn, my emotional bank account goes way up with stories like that. So, man, hit me up. Even when I do bad, even when you disagree, but you're listening and it makes you feel good. Hit me up. I don't. Please do it in a respectful way. Don't. If you have something disrespectful or just plain out mean to say, I mean, I guess you can do that too, but you definitely won't get a response. I don't mind it for sure. Even I appreciate that story. I literally almost cried in Whole Foods today. So that was just my little rant before we get going today on the podcast. Rich Franklin, man, the champ, Rich Ace Franklin. I was sitting on my back patio on a Monday night and I got a phone call over WhatsApp and I was like, who the hell is this hitting me up? Normally it's a vendor, normally it's a vendor trying to sell me some shit over WhatsApp. Normally it's a text. I was like, man, this guy actually has the balls to call me to sell. And, Rich is in China now working for ONE FC. So over WhatsApp it was. And he was like, I got 45 minutes to an hour right now. You want to do this? And I was like, well, hell yeah, I'm going to run upstairs. So here we go, guys. Rich Ace Franklin. So, man, talk about an impromptu phone call. I've been trying to get a hold of Rich Franklin through my friend Chris Mearswack. Rich is in China, and I'm over here in Colorado. And then I just got this phone call on my WhatsApp, and I'm like, who the fuck is this? And I was like, oh, shit, I think that's Rich Franklin. So I answered it, and here we are. What up, man?
Hey, what's going on? It's funny because when you answer the phone, you're like, you had that attitude or that sound in your voice. Like, who's this? And I'm like, hey, this is Rich Franklin. You're like, oh, hey, what's going on?
So here's the deal with that. I own martial arts schools, right? So I constantly get hit up on WhatsApp from people to try to sell me martial arts gear. And it's so, they don't stop. They don't stop. And I was like, holy shit, this person's going to have the balls to call me at 8 o'clock at night. On a Monday night and try to sell me some shit, and they've never fucking met me. That was my thought when I first saw the call.
Well, don't worry. We'll do the podcast first, and remind me to talk to you after we're done about that stuff that I want to sell you.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you. Is it going to be gis and rash guards and gloves that suck?
Yeah, exactly. Some stuff that's made from a low cost producer or something.
Yes,
like
that'd be amazing if you could do that. And if it could take 6 to 8 months to get here after I send you the cash. So I'm wondering if I spent money that I just got robbed on in another country.
I'll only promise you it'll take 6 to 8 months to get there after you spend the cash. If you agree that I'll also make sure that the order is wrong when it arrives.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I'll be fine with the order being wrong as well.
Okay.
All right. So we'll talk after the podcast.
Sounds like a plan.
So we have some mutual friends, right? Chris Mearswack moved out to Colorado as a purple belt, and he trained with you guys, with you and George, right? During your rise.
Yeah, Chris is one of my longtime training partners. Not just trained with me, but he was there in my camp for many, many fights, and vice versa. I was there to help him get ready as well. Actually, one of my favorite stories about Chris is he was helping me get ready for Chuck, and he came in one day.
You and I fought on that card together. No, that wasn't that card. Maybe it was. I don't know.
That was Vancouver. Were you in Vancouver?
No, we were on Dallas in a card together.
Yeah. That wasn't a good card for me though. But yeah, Chris came in when I was prepping for Chuck, and he shaved his head in the mohawk and took a Sharpie and drew the kanji on the side of his head and the little kempo. I have a picture of us squaring off. It's really cool. But that's the kind of training partners I had, man. These guys, they sacrificed, got into character, and did a bunch of stuff like that all the time. And so Chris was there for many camps for me.
It's such an underrated game, because those guys are trying to be pros, trying to make it as well. I would say most people don't make it, correct? Like, so
yeah, and you know what makes it really difficult for people. Actually, I think Chris and I we were talking about this the other day about how certain people oftentimes they have a problem letting go of something. If particularly when you're in a school with somebody like me, because I have a group of guys in the school, and I look at somebody like Chris or a lot of the training partners I had. I mean, these guys, they're talented guys. You're talking about guys that are coming in and giving me a hard time on a daily basis, whether we're sparring or grappling or whatever. So I can only imagine from their perspective that they're seeing things like, look, I'm on the same level as this guy, and he became a champion. So why? There's no reason why I wouldn't be able to become a champion. But the problem with that thought process is that there are a lot of things that go into that happening, and it's, I mean, some of it you can call it luck, you can call it. I think God really had a path for me in this world, and the stars just kind of aligned for me at the right time. And for some people, they do not, even though the talent may be there. And so there are a lot of these X factors, so to speak, that can keep you from being ultra successful. But what happens is when you're in a school with somebody like me, perhaps it makes it quite difficult to know when to say, hey, look, this is probably not the way I'm going to make an amazing living, so I should move on. And Chris was really smart. Like he was really smart about his career as an athlete, but then when to say, you know what, I can do something better and make great money. And obviously he's gone and moved to Denver and been very successful there. So he's one of the smart guys.
Man, he just quit his job with Zen Planner, where and he's working for me now, at my schools. Yep. And he's amazing. He's amazing. Yeah, he built a class. I mean, so let's be honest, 7:30 at night is not like prime time hour. like the last class of the night, and he built it, man. He has 20 people showing up to that class every night.
It's probably going to end up, if he's running that class, it's probably going to end up being your best class on your schedule.
Yeah, he does a great job. It's one of the most packed classes. But man, that other thing that you said, like that's one of my biggest questions in the world, man, is like, I don't remember who I talked to about it. Like what is it that makes what is it, luck? Because I'm not like a big, like I'm opposite of you. I don't believe in like I believe in a higher power, not necessarily a particular one. What makes it so that some people, and let's not even talk about like greatness. Let's talk like what makes it so that like you and I have a good life, let's say, like, and somebody else is born in like with no water and AIDS, and like what is that? That's my biggest question in the whole world, I think. More than like how we got there, and more than like what happens to us after we die, for me.
I think when you talk about a higher power, I don't want to get too super philosophical on this stuff, but I believe like when you talk about a higher power, I believe in God, and I believe that when you create the universe, like when he created the universe, it was created with a balance, much like a mathematical equation, so to speak. And if you have an equation and you have a positive value on one side of the equation, you're also going to have some sort of value of the same amount on the other side of the equation to keep things balanced. And I believe that there's kind of a balance to the system of things. And to be honest, man, it's like, I'm not the maker of the universe, and I don't understand how everything works, but I think that there's a balance of things, and I see it. I see exactly what you're talking about on this side of the world. When I'm traveling, like I do a lot of traveling for the project that I work for.
What is the project you're working for?
It's called One Warrior Series. It's called Rich Franklin's One Warrior Series. Okay. And what I essentially do is I travel around. I recruit talent in all the world, but pretty much on
something just happened with the audio there.
Yeah, hang on a second here.
No worries.
Is this better?
Yep,
sorry about that. Yeah. No, so I travel around on this side of the world, and I recruit talent for my own organization. And I have about 120 plus athletes on roster, and they compete. And so in traveling, when I go to some of these countries, like I'll be in countries like Myanmar, which is formerly Burma, or Cambodia, or the Philippines, or wherever I'm going, particularly in Southeast Asia, and you see a lot of poverty. I've met families so poor that a family of 5 shared a single toothbrush. And I grew up poor in the States by United States standards.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, I was just going to say exactly. There are different levels of that game.
Exactly. And so when you talk about being poor in the U.S., I mean, growing up poor in the U.S., I never had to worry about having food on the table. My mom worked 70, 80-hour work weeks all the time. Like that was, and my mom was a waitress when I was growing up. So we lived off of tips and stuff like that. And,
right.
and anybody who's grown up in that kind of environment knows how hard that life is. But I mean, we had food on the table. We always had food on the table. My mom always figured out a way to provide Christmas gifts for us as kids, and never went without a Christmas gift.
The U.S. is the jackpot of being poor.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
exactly.
So if you're going to be poor, let it be America, let it be America, let it be America, right? Like.
Exactly, because it ends up. I think probably one of the worst things I had to deal with as a kid is I remember that I was on subsidized lunch when I was in junior high, and I hated using that card because I remember at first my friends were like, "Wait, you get free lunch? Like, how's that happen? Like, I want free lunch too." And then they realized that I got free lunch because I was poor,
right?
And then suddenly you're marked, and I can remember that kind of just hating to pull that card out for lunch when I was a kid and stuff like that. And I would imagine the system's different in schools now. Like they probably have some sort of credit system, so it's more difficult to tell. But
they have a number. Like my kids have a number that they have to memorize, and they enter it in, so nobody knows anything about the other person.
Yeah. So that's great, man. But but again, going back to the whole concept, it's like poor here is way different than poor is in some of these countries that I see, and so I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that, man.
Yeah,
I believe that the universe was set up with some sort of system of balance, and I believe that it's like the responsibility of us as individuals to kind of bring that system into balance. Growing up, I was on one side of the equation being very poor, and now I'm on another side of the equation being not very wealthy, but at least I've done really well for myself considering considering my starting point. But I also feel that I have a responsibility to help people out who are in need as well. And so, I believe that if you think of that balance scale as like a Libra, where you're on a tipping scale, the closer I can bring myself to the center, I'm bringing other people to that center as well, kind of helping distribute things out. And I don't want to sound like a socialist or anything like that either necessarily.
No, it's okay, man. I agree with you because it's not socialism. I call it sprinkling. I stole it. It's called sprinkling the luck dust. I like to sprinkle the luck dust on as many people as I possibly can.
Exactly. So that's the whole thing. I feel responsibility to help people out who are not as well off as I am.
So you grew up in Ohio. Is that where you grew up?
Ohio, Kentucky. I was actually born in Kentucky, and I'm from Kentucky. But when you tell people that if you're from Florence, nobody knows where that is, or they're thinking Italy perhaps. But
right.
no, it's right there around the Cincinnati area. So I grew up in that area my whole life, both sides of the river.
And you were a single parent household, just your mom?
Yeah, my typical parents divorced when I was young, 5 years of age, and then there was really rough custody battle when I was a kid, and then my dad had visitation rights. We went to his house every other weekend. That kind of standard setup for kids who've gone through divorce.
And then, so when did martial arts become a thing?
So my dad put me in karate when I was about 10 years old, 9 or 10, and I trained for a couple years as a young kid. But then as time went on, I was busy. We moved a lot as a young kid, and I got involved in other sports, high school American football, which that's how you refer to it on this side of the world. But football it was like my first love. Like I grew up playing that sport, loved the game, and I had dreams of doing that in college. But I just got involved in other sports. When I was a kid, I tried almost everything once. Like I even did swim team for a year when I was young, and so my senior year, when I realized that I wasn't going to get a scholarship for football, I started thinking about, well, what do I want to do? Because I've been an athlete my whole life, and I don't know how to not be active. And so this is pre-mixed martial arts in the United States. And so I decided to get back into karate, to give that a shot. And I thought this would be great because.
So like what year is that?
92.
Okay, so way before mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
For us.
And so, for me, my thinking was, well, this will keep me active and I kill two birds with one stone, because in the event that I need to defend myself, I'm learning how to fight as well. Mm-hmm. So, it kind of served a dual purpose in my mind. And then, I did couple point fighting karate tournaments. I saw the first UFC in the States, and quickly started thinking like, man, if I really had to defend myself on the street, I better learn how to fight on the ground, because most of these fights end up on the ground. And so then, karate turned into doing a little bit of jiu-jitsu, and my instructor's son came back home from the Marine Corps, and then we started doing some Muay Thai together because he'd been overseas. And I started getting exposed to all these other martial arts. And this was very quickly after I started training in 92. And, so by, I don't know, whatever, 1994, 95, I was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, which at that time was a big deal.
Oh, God. Dude, so my teacher, Amal, when he opened his school, he was a purple belt. And like people don't understand. Like this, I mean, purple was God.
Oh,
purple.
Blue. If you were a blue belt,
you were a badass.
1993. You were, exactly.
Yeah, in America, like holy shit, you were like, we ran our town. We were blue belts. Like we we ran the bars. Like I worked at one bar, my buddy worked at another bar. We worked between these two bars, and like we just like there used to be all these problems in the bar scene in Boulder, and then like they all went away.
No,
as blue belts, we sucked, man. We sucked. It was just the aura of it.
It was the same with me. Listen, I bounced in this bar on the west side of town in Cincinnati one time, and we never had fights. It was and just I was the only white guy in this bar, and I'm the bouncer. I'm literally the only white guy in the bar. It's this is an all black club, and so that can go one of two ways. And so early on, when the club opens up, I'm bouncing in this club. I got this job through my dad was working downtown as a nurse in the hospital, and one of the ladies that he worked with, her husband opened the bar. So this is how I ended up getting the job. And long story short, this guy starts getting out of hand just like a week after the club opened up. And most of our clientele were higher end clientele, people that are wearing like not really expensive clothes and Louis Vuitton shoes and Gucci things and stuff like that, and not the kind of people that want to get in fights. And this guy started getting out of hand a little bit. And I just remember that I tried to walk him out and be nice. And, I had watched Roadhouse several times, so I know, be nice until it's time not to be nice, and always take it outside. But I just remember, and I was
yeah, that's the line of the podcast. I've watched Roadhouse several times. I don't know where you're going to beat that one, man.
Come on, man. It's like, that's part of my handbook for being a man.
I get it.
So in the 1980s and 1990s version of Patrick Swayze can teach anybody how to be a man. You just need to watch Roadhouse, Point Break, and Dirty Dancing, and you pretty much got all three bases covered.
Good. Yeah.
But yeah, man, so this guy, I put him on the ground and ended up putting him in a collar choke with his own button-up shirt. And nobody had ever seen anything like that before. And so I suddenly get like labeled as this crazy guy. Like, and, people did not want to mess with me when they came in. And that's the only issue I ever had in that club the whole time, because after that I had this reputation for like, I had probably like studied with some mystic arts in the mountains, in the Himalayas or something like that.
Dude, especially when they see the person like starting to wake back up, like, and they convulse a little bit sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh fuck, that guy's dead. They're like, oh fuck, that guy's dead. Like, what the fuck, and they're losing it, and he's going to be okay, and you're like, damn, I'm never going to have to do this again.
Exactly.
I'm never going to have to do this again.
I had made my job as a bouncer the easiest job in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so simple, right? Like, I mean, I choked one football player out. That was it. That's who our problems used to be with, is the football team. I choked one dude out, and then that was, we were done, and then we were all friends. Like, they'd come in, I'd say hi, they'd say hi. There'd never be any problems, and it's like, yeah, one time. So yeah. So you're bouncing in a bar, and like, when was your first fight? Why was your first fight? And like, when did you get hooked up with George Gurgel?
Yeah. So interesting. Back in the day, I was training. So my instructor's son, when I was doing traditional karate, he had two sons, and one of them was older. He was about my age, a couple years older than me. And he had been in the Marine Corps, and he'd come back from the Marine Corps, and he and I started doing some Muay Thai together. And then his younger son, who was on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, Josh Rafferty, was he and I were good friends and kind of grew up together. He's a few years younger than me, but he and I had been training for the longest time together. And I had been doing jiu-jitsu at the jiu-jitsu school for the longest time, but then kind of quickly outgrew the school. Like, if you if you have
this
the
was an
learning
easy
curve,
thing back in the day to outgrow your school.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you have the learning curve for it, it doesn't take long to get better than, say, a blue belt, even if you're being taught by blue belts.
Right.
And so, eventually he and I, we started working out in, there's this famous story about us working out in this lawnmower shed in his yard. And it was in his yard where we were doing this shed that his mom had set up for us to train in. And at the time we were learning a lot of stuff with, videos, watching videos, and it was VHS at the time,
Fuck
this
yeah,
was
there's no internet, man.
Pre-DVD, pre-internet, pre-YouTube, and anybody who's worked with a VHS before, you can pause that thing and try to rewind it and frame by frame, but it's not, it's nothing like.
Well, you got to get to the pixels
now.
of the scratchiness of it too. It sucked.
Exactly. But that's, that's how I learned for a couple years. And my jiu-jitsu, it had gotten better. But the reality is, like, for learning on our own, Josh and I were doing really, really well. I mean, we were completely sequestered at the time because it's not like Cincinnati has a ton of resources. And then we had been training, and we saw a flyer for a local MMA show. It was like, well, let's go check this out. And we watched this flyer, and that's where I met another friend of mine, guy by the name of Kerry Shaw, who was also on the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. And we all started training together in this small group. And so after we watched this show and I met this guy, then we saw a flyer at that show for another local small show, just an amateur show out of Muncie, Indiana. And that was where I took my first fight in 1998. It was the year that I graduated college. And of course, I mean, mixed martial arts at the time was just the wild, wild west. I competed in places where rings were outdoors and the dew point has set in, and it feels like you're fighting on a slip and slide because you weren't using canvas, you were using vinyl. Right. I've fought in places where the ring broke in the middle of my match. I fought in places where chickens are walking across the locker rooms at the fairgrounds because you're fighting outside. Like, so many different things.
I fought in a horse farm, a horse stable once.
Yeah, exactly. And you probably use one of the stables as a warm up area. Yep. They threw some mats down, or maybe just some hay or something like that, because that was normal at the time, right? Like that. You thought
nothing else. You thought nothing else of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like I'm very appreciative of the time frame in which I, quote unquote, grew up in mixed martial arts, because I got to see a lot of things that people nowadays probably wouldn't get to see. Just with, oftentimes there were situations where you didn't have an athletic commission present because most of the states back then didn't have athletic commissions. They didn't have sanctioning or rulings or governance on any of the smaller shows, amateur shows and stuff like that.
You talked about the rules in the back before the fight. You all agreed upon them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, no hitting below the belt. You kind of sit next to your opponent like, you got that? You got, okay, little handshake.
Headbutts, yes or no? Headbutts, yes or no on the headbutts? Exactly. I want headbutts. You want headbutts? Like, yeah.
It's like, oftentimes I had that kind of schoolyard feel to it. Like, okay, listen, we got the dance this weekend, so we're going to fight, but no hitting in the face this time. When you're in the 8th grade, like, okay, we'll both agree on this.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. So I didn't fight yet then. I wasn't quite ready for that. But my friend did. So I was at all of his shows. I was always with him. We traveled all over like the area, Texas, Wyoming, Colorado area together.
Yeah.
So man, so then you get to the UFC. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, so, we were training for a little while on our own, and then Josh happened to stumble on George's school. And I'd heard rumors of this, I think George was still a brown belt at the time, actually, but, that was a huge resource for us at the time. So Josh, like, well,
shit, son, you got a brown belt in 98? Come on.
Exactly. Well, it was maybe 99.
All right, 99. Still a brown belt in 99.
Yeah, exactly.
Whew, and you're not on a coast. Like if you were on a coast, you could get something, but not on a coast. Holy shit.
Yeah, he was also a brown belt on the verge of getting his black belt too.
Right.
And so Josh, like, I'm gonna go check this guy's place out, and I was just pretty much like, let me know how this is. Like, let me know how he is, man. And not even realizing the kind of resource you have, because George, man, black belts like that, you realize that people in those situations, like, he's probably forgotten more jiu-jitsu than I'll ever learn, type of thing. And so the first time I went up to his school, we were grappling together, and by, good jiu-jitsu standards, my jiu-jitsu was sloppy, but athletically enough to keep him from passing my guard. And he looks at me, he's like, dude, he's like, you really have a talent here. Like, we train together, you could be so much better. And he's like, it was kind of like one of those, and you could help me with my stand up and this and that. And so it was kind of like this trade off between us. Like, well, I'll help you with your stand up. You help me with the jiu-jitsu. And so that's how things work. And from that point in time, my MMA training really started to take shape of what it kind of was, by modern standards, I guess.
Right. And how many fights till you got into the UFC?
So I had about a half a dozen amateur fights, most of which aren't recorded,
Right.
I don't know if any of them are actually recorded.
That's a lot of amateur fights for back then.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had, before I was actually in the UFC, maybe I want to say about 14 matches. And it was interesting because my first match in the UFC was against Evan Tanner, who had already had like 8 or 9 matches in the UFC, and his only loss was against Tito Ortiz. Yeah. So, I mean, when I came into the UFC right away, they were looking to throw me to the wolves.
Man, so this is, I was talking about this with somebody today. It was when like, being ready for a situation. Like for me, I had 6 total fights before I got in the UFC. Man, I was scared. I could barely fucking fight. Right, like that's how it was back then, right? Like when you say 14 fights, dude, that's a lot of fights for, like, in my opinion, before you get in. Especially if your record's decent, right? Like, so I was 5-1, got on the Ultimate Fighter in the UFC. Man, you're a baby at fighting.
For sure.
When you have these boxers who have 200 fights before they go pro, and like fighting is just so second nature to them. So
that's the whole thing. A lot of these young guys, man, I tell young guys now, I'm like, dude, listen, get all the amateur fights you can. Like get this experience under your belt, because there's so many things that can make you better as an athlete. Like, and people are such in a rush. Like, well, why would I fight amateur when I can fight professionally and get paid? And yeah, I mean, I get the point. I had to put my time in. I remember my first fight that I got paid $200 for my first paying fight. And the thought, I was like, holy crap, you can make money doing this. Wow. And now I kind of chuckle about it, but that's the reality of things. But, you learn how to deal with things as an amateur that are really important, like pacing in a fight, or how to avoid adrenaline dump.
That takes time, though. That takes it happening to you a bunch. That takes you like working through that, like, and to work through that in the UFC sucks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the whole thing. And so there's so often I see people that come into a big organization, even on this side of the world, one championship, like people that'll come in young that don't have these kind of skills. And there's so many skills, and I just think to myself, you're in this organization and you only have 4 fights. And now you have to learn how to pace yourself, how to unfold a game plan, how to listen to your coaches, how to avoid adrenaline dumping, all these other factors that make an athlete great. Because at the end of the day, you got to remember this: you don't have to be the greatest fighter in the world. You just have to be better than the person standing across the ring on a given night. That's it. That's your job. And that all these things, all these skills have to just like culminate simultaneously into one single night. And if one of those factors is off, if you had a bad night of sleep and you don't have the energy that you need, or if you got in an argument with your girlfriend, or if you're anxious about something and your adrenaline is high and you're coming into the match with a higher than normal heartbeat or something like that, like all these things come into play and can really mess up a performance. And so
it'd be great to learn how to deal with all those things when they don't really matter.
Exactly, and that's what your amateur career is all about. But people see the glory, man, and they want to get there as fast as possible.
They want that Conor McGregor money, man.
Boom.
They want that Conor McGregor money. Which, good luck with that.
Yeah, you know what? I see that, and people always they look at me and they think like, man, you feel like you missed out because I was on that wave of mixed martial arts in the States before. Yeah. And I sit and think like, you know what? It would be nice to have a couple more zeros in my bank account for sure. But I don't know if I would trade my experience for those dollars, man. I was in this sport in an epic time right when it was starting to legitimize, right when it was starting to be accepted. So
you were more than in the sport. You were a champion in the sport.
Yeah, exactly. And I was a pillar of growing this thing.
Yeah.
You know, they used me as the look. This is not the stereotypical what you would think a fighter would be like. Smart people fight too. This guy's a teacher.
Yeah.
So it was it was cool being part of that whole thing, man.
What was that like when you fought on like Saturday and had to go to work on a Monday in like school?
Oh, dude, that was crazy. Here's a funny story. So, you know, I quit teaching in '02 full time, but I was still working part time 1 to 2 days a week in an at-risk program. And this was the kind of program where students would do their curriculum on a computer, and I was just there to basically help them with pretty much any subject, even though I was math certified. But so all these students would wait until I was working to ask me all the math and science questions.
I was a math major too.
Yeah. So it was really, really, really cool program. And I worked all the way in this program part-time up until about 10 days before my title match with Evan Tanner. So that means I was working during I had what, three bouts prior to that. Yeah. So I was working during the time where I was actually
Why don't you call them
competing.
fights? Why do you call them matches and bouts?
Oh, I don't know. It's
Just a habit? Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, it was funny because, you know, at the time, like, just to rewind things a little bit, Ken Shamrock was one of my favorite fighters when I was in the early days, right? I mean, he was the first guy that came out that was truly for the initial phase of athletes in the UFC. He was the first guy that was kind of really a mixed martial artist. Like, he had some grappling.
Yes.
You know, like he was like that you know, MMA 1.0 athlete before the next generation.
He's the first MMA fighter. Everyone else fought NHB, no holds barred, right? Like,
everybody else was a specialist in a particular art, like jiu-jitsu or karate or boxing. And so I really looked up to him during this time frame. And man, I mean, he looked the part. He walked out looking like a Roman gladiator, right?
Right.
And so, you know, he ends up making a name for himself more mainstream because he does professional wrestling for a few years after he had transitioned into that. And then he comes back. And all my students knew who Ken Shamrock was. So they would always ask me, like, hey, do you think you could beat Ken Shamrock in a fight? And so I'm sitting there like, yeah, that'd be no problem. Running my mouth as a teacher, never dreaming that I would be standing across the cage from him. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, man, you know, my students are asking me this. And then in March of that year of 03, was it 03? No, that wasn't 03. It was 05, March of 05, when I'm standing across the cage from him, and I'm like, oh my God, I was talking all this junk, joking around with my kids.
Here I am.
Yeah, now I got to see if I can cash this check that my mouth has been writing the whole time.
Yeah, for sure. Man, so Chris told me to get you to talk about a specific thing, if you would. I believe you said it was the second Anderson fight.
Yeah.
And so obviously the first one didn't go well for you.
Yeah.
And it actually, which I think you've described it really well in the past. Like, it went exactly how you planned, like in the clinch, and you were like, I'm going to kill him here. And I think and then when that doesn't work out, it's like, oh my God, like people don't understand what that's like. Like, here I am, this is my sweet spot, and oh my God, no, this is not. What do I do? Yeah. Like, what do I do?
Exactly.
You know?
Because when I looked at Anderson prior to our first match, I always thought, like, well, this guy, I'm bigger than him, I'm stronger than him, and I had been working extensively on my wrestling, and I had never, like, my style of doing quote-unquote Muay Thai, because I don't consider myself a Muay Thai fighter. I'm more of a boxer that just throws some kicks, some Muay Thai-style kicks. And so, you know, I've never been a clinch fighter. But I thought, if he clinches me, he's in trouble because I'm so much stronger than him. And so in training for that fight, like, we completely neglected all the clinch training. And you know, I thought, like, taking him down won't be an issue or any of that stuff. And man, the moment he caught me in that clinch, and what he does really well is, it's not that he feels super strong, but he takes your balance, he manipulates your spine, and then the moment you start working against that, then he uses your own energy against you. And then suddenly now you're more off balance the other direction, and then you fight, and then he'll use that energy, and so on and so forth. And it's just this like you're sinking in quicksand, and
there's nothing you can do about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we made a lot of adjustments in the second in the second fight against him. There were a lot of things we did differently. That fight was in Cincinnati, which was my hometown,
right?
And there was a lot of pressure on me for
the
that
first
one.
fight.
So,
yes.
No, the second fight,
one. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there was a lot of pressure both times, but the second one particularly because I had won a couple matches and worked my way back up to him, and now here it is in my hometown. There's a ton of hype. I'm doing way more media than I want to, and I decided to just take a group of my training partners, and we all flew out to Wyoming together. And we stayed in Pinedale, man, just outside of Jackson Hole, which I'm sure now is probably built up a little bit because I know BP had just kind of arrived there and they were doing some stuff with some oil piping. But at the time, Pinedale was, I don't know, population maybe like 2,000. There was no stoplights in the whole city, one or two stop signs. And it was the kind of place where, people would pull up to the gas station on their quad runner with their shotgun holster in the gas station, walking in, pistols on their hips and stuff like that, which is my kind of town. And so it was just nice. Like it almost feels like you went back in time 150 years. Right. And it's a place where life is really simple. So we got up to this place, sequestered ourselves, trained in the altitude, set up our wrestling mats in an archery range that was attached to an ice rink, and did all of our training there. And I took a group of about 12 people up and completely sequester ourselves. And we did a lot of training, a lot of extensive training on the clinch. I think it showed in the second match. Like I actually think before I got clipped, I was probably winning the first round. Yeah. And then I got clipped right as the 10-second call came out and dropped and survived that round. But, I always jokingly say that Anderson, it's difficult fighting one of him, let alone when you can see two of them. Makes it even more difficult. So,
some of your anxieties came to play, though. Chris told me, he was like, "Man, you like when you were walking out, you hoped the lights would go out." Oh, I do this every time. Me too. This is one of the things that I talk about. Like people like. I always tell people, I mean, this is kind of a common thing, amongst motivational people that are into motivational talks and stuff like that. It's like courage it's not the absence of fear. It's being able to face your fear and walk through it. And a lot of people in this world, people like to live in a comfort zone. Everybody does. I like to live in a comfort zone. I like to sleep in a comfortable temperature. I like to get up at a comfortable time. I like to make sure that my belly is well fed. I'm constantly comfortable. If you're hot, you turn on the AC. It's just this is how people live life. And then there are certain people that they say, I want to get out of my comfort zone in life, and I want to do something different. And some people are comfortable with being uncomfortable. And but even if you fall into that category, and I would consider someone like myself, or even someone like you, obviously, who pursues a career in this kind of sport, is a person who's comfortable with being uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean that when it's your call time, when it's time to go, that you're not scared. Scared shitless. Exactly, right? Because people, even when you're walking out, like you got this stone cold look on your face, or you're smiling, or you look like you're about ready to have the time of your life, because that's what you do. But I mean, the reality is that all these fears and anxieties that are inside of you they manifest, and you start asking. I always like. I would literally pray to God. I'd be like, Lord, if you could just make the lights in the arena go out tonight so that so that you have an excuse to be a coward that's not on you, that it's on something else, is essentially what you're praying for. Because ultimately, if I have to be the one to make myself the coward, then I would rather face my fear than not. Well, sure, you're not going to do it. You're not going to make yourself the coward. Yes, exactly. But a lot of people will fold, and that's the difference between people who accomplish great things in this world and people who don't. It's like everybody's afraid. It's just there are certain people who refuse to fold. This is my biggest thing that people say when people go, yeah, man, I'd fight Mike Tyson for $2 million, and I'm like Mike Tyson in his heyday. I'm like, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. I'll give you a 50% shot at showing up at the arena. Yeah. 50%. And then, now we're talking about fight, actually, right? We're not talking about, take the first jab and fall down. You have to go out there and really try to win. You wouldn't make the walk. You'd shit yourself before you made the walk. Yeah, if you don't know what that's like yet, if you don't know those feelings, you won't do it. You won't do that to go face a stone cold killer. That's really going to try to put you in the hospital. For sure, man. And it's but my anxieties and my fears, they never came down to the being hurt or anything like that,
because I always tell people that at the end of the day, the worst critic for me is the man in the mirror. Because when I fall short of my goal, and this comes down to daily training. If I'm training for a day and everybody's had those times when they're training and suddenly you're stuck under somebody, you're tired, and you feel like tapping out. It's like, oh man, I'm just done for the day. This is my 6th round of high conditioning, multiple partner sparring, and I'm just done. And I just want to tap out. And you have this moment of mental weakness. And if you succumb to those thoughts, for me personally, when I go home, I'm showering, and when I'm done showering, I wipe the mirror down, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and then I suddenly think, like, you gave up today, and nobody else knows. Your coach doesn't know, your training partner doesn't know, but you know. And I'm my own worst critic. I'm so hard on myself that I could never let that happen. And that's why I would have so much anxiety when I'm walking out for a match, because the thought of failure, of not letting millions of fans down, or not letting my family down, or I always tell people that my mother, the first fight of mine that she ever attended was when I defended my title against Anderson the first time, and she's sitting cage side. So imagine what that feels like for my mom, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I'm not going home worried about, I let my mom down or this or that. Or I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I let myself down. And you start evaluating where you really mess this thing up. And it doesn't come to you. Not everything is immediate, because I sat there at the Mandalay Bay, staring out of my hotel room, looking at the I-5, watching traffic go by until the sun came up the following morning, just asking myself, like, how did this happen? How did I get here? And I didn't have an answer to those questions that night. But after several months of really thinking about what had happened, I realized it's like my own arrogance led me to that. And I had nobody to blame but myself for the failure of that loss.
I would say that's how it is in most cases when we're really being honest, right? Like, it's nobody else's fault.
And it's hard. It's hard to really self-assess and just be blatantly honest with yourself and say, yeah, this is on me. It's on me, because everybody wants an excuse. Oh, well, we didn't win that game because, I played great, but he didn't catch the pass I threw. It hit him right in the numbers, or, whatever. You can always blame stuff on somebody else. But in reality, people that accomplish great things step back and say, yep, that was my fault.
When you blame other people, when you put your shit, your failures, your shortcomings on other people, then how do you fix it?
Yeah, you can't. You can't.
When it's on you, it's easy. I love it when I have to find how it's my fault, like every situation. Yeah. So, because
I always say this, like, here's the reality. If I have a coach, for example, let's just say that the reason why I lost one of my fights was because of my coach. My coach had a bad game plan and I listened to him, or my coach did something or whatever. Then I should have recognized that it was as it was going on. I'm a free agent. I'm a thinking person, and I know as these things are happening. And I should have replaced my coach, but instead I didn't, because I have loyalty to this person, or I did, whatever. And it's still always fault. You're the source. You're in control of everything. And people that, this is one of those things that we go back to growing up poor and stuff like that. Like, me growing up poor, I know people that are in those kind of situations, it's easy to victimize yourself. Like, well, I was born into this poverty, so my family is just poor, and this is just how life is for me. It's like, no. It doesn't have to be that way. Like, you can create your own destiny. You can change your stars. You can do whatever you need to do. You need to take responsibility, both for making things happen, and your successes and your failures, so to speak.
And as we talked about earlier, we, as the not poor people, as the more privileged people today, have to keep putting out the message and show people how it's done.
Yep.
So that they can, like, because we don't know what makes it happen, and a lot of times for people, it's like hearing a certain thing at a certain time, and for some reason it clicks in their head. Right, like, you don't know who you're talking, like, when they're talking to somebody, and then there it is. So, like, that's that's my whole goal with the podcast, as we talked a little earlier, man. When you asked, like, you asked me if I was going to ask you about, like, the upcoming fights. No, I don't give a fuck. Like, I don't give a fuck, because there's plenty of people. You go listen to Big Brown Breakdown. Like, I'm sure. Like, and man, people love Brendan. Like, dude, yeah, and he does a great job. But yeah, if you want fights, go listen to that. Go on Ariel's show, which are all way more successful than mine. I'm not knocking those guys, but that's what they do. That is not what I'm about. I'm about trying to bring people on like yourself, like all the other guests that I try to have on, so that we can, like, somebody might just catch your message. You know,
Yep.
Somebody might catch him at just some other kid from Florence, Kentucky, right? Is that that's where you were born? Yeah, some from Florence, Kentucky might go, damn, really? I'm some poor ass hick. And man, if Rich Frank, I didn't know Rich Frank was from Florence. I thought he was from Cincinnati. I like Rich Frank. And then boom, they follow your story, and then there it is. We don't know why it happens.
You know, it's interesting that you talk about that, because working for One Championship over here, one of the things that we stress, and this is what I'm in the business of doing, is it's storytelling. You know, I travel around, I recruit talent, I tell the stories of the athletes that I recruit, and I have the power to tell a story that can possibly change somebody else's future. We have one of our champions, a gentleman by the name of Allah. He's Burmese, and this guy, when he goes into Myanmar, the entire country shuts down. And you realize that what the kind of impact that he has. And he's a very, very, very positive. He's always putting out positive messaging and stuff like that. And, one of the things that he talks about, or that we talk about with him, is that he has the power to really change politics in a nation, for example. Like, he has that kind of platform over here. But more importantly, there's some little kid in this country who's born into poverty that he's given hope to that person, now they're thinking like, if he can do it, I can do it. And that's really important, man, because you never know, just a simple hello or, passing of a 2-minute conversation that you can have with somebody, the kind of impact. And this goes back to what I was saying before, like I have this responsibility to help people out in this world. Like, you just never know the kind of impact that you have on other people just in a simple passing.
It's and it can be huge. And and I was just talking to, I have a CEO for the schools, for our business, and then my business partner Amal, and we sat down and sometimes, man, we're like, you're so busy, right? Like, you're so busy and somebody wants your time and you get like short. You're just like, okay, what's up? What's next? And it's somebody new that you've never met before. And I noticed that I did it a week ago. I noticed that somebody else did it 3 days later, and then boom, there it was again today. And after the meeting today, I was like, hey guys, look, we got to take 20 more seconds.
Yep.
We got to take 20 more seconds to make sure that when we talk to people or get on the phone or have a meeting, and especially when it's people that we don't know, when we're meeting them for the first time, look, they're in their minds, they're busy too. Whether they're as busy as us or not, we'll never fucking know. But like we that needs to be a phenomenal meeting on the personal level for them. Like, whether we do business with them or not is a totally different subject. Like, we can hash that out. But they need to leave that meeting like, man, those guys are awesome.
So when I was in college, I was valeting cars. Me and my brother used to valet cars for this nice restaurant downtown Cincinnati. It doesn't exist anymore. But this was at a time when Dion Sanders was playing for the Cincinnati Reds. And, we're down there at the corner of 6th and Walnut, and my brother points over, he goes, that's Dion Sanders. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, man, I sure would like to get an autograph. And I said, well, go ask him for one. He's like, no. I'm saying, come on, man. He was just standing on the corner. He didn't look busy. He wasn't with anybody. He was just standing by himself. Looked like he was waiting for some people. I said, come on, I'll walk up with you. So we walk up to Dion, and my brother's like, hey, Dion, huge fan. Can I get an autograph? And he was just he was really rude. Didn't give the autograph. And I said to my brother at the time, I said, man, if I was ever famous, I would never treat a fan this way. And not thinking like what could ever possibly happen to me.
Sure.
And we just kind of went about our way and continued working. And that's kind of, I remember that experience. And I remember me actually saying that to my brother, because that's how I live. Like, every time I have any kind of autograph session or a line, especially when I was competing, like, anybody that came through my line, I'm like, this is the only time that this person may ever get to meet me. So I want them to feel like they were the only person I met.
And they're standing in line to do so.
Exactly. And so, there would be times where people would stand in line 2-3 hours just to get an autograph. And I would constantly, man, the people that were managing the lines would always look at me and say, Rich, man, you need to speed up. Like, you're spending too much time with these guests. And I'm just like, no. I'm sorry. And there'd be times where it's like, I would be there for a 2.5-hour autograph session, but I end up staying 3.5 hours just to make it through my line. And it was always so important to me. Like, it would be rare. It would be rare if I could find a fan that was like, yeah, no, actually, I met Rich one time and he was a complete jerk. I would be truly, upset by hearing that, because I've gone to great lengths. So much so that I actually, I'm living on the other side of the world and doing all this traveling. I didn't have time to go accept my Hall of Fame award. And so I sent in a video that basically thanking the fans, the UFC and everything. And somebody had posted on my my social media, like, I traveled all the way down to Vegas. Like, he was upset. He traveled to Vegas and I wasn't there. And it's like, I came there to see Rich accept his speech, accept his award, and he couldn't even bother showing up. And I just sent him a message that basically said, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm really busy, and if you let me make it up to you, I would love to sign a an 8x10 for you and send it to you. And I know it's not the same thing, but it's my way of recognizing, like, these.
Let's clear that story up. Your best friend was getting married, and like, you chose to go to his wedding.
Yeah, but it wasn't just that. I mean, listen, man, my time is just really, really limited.
Sure.
So,
but that's where you were, right? You were in Mexico, and your best friend was getting married.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, the Dominican actually.
The Dominican. Okay. Yeah. The DR. So yeah, man, like, and things happen in life, but you put something else that I think was more important first. You other than you accepting the Hall of Fame award. Like you're so. Give yourself a little break.
Yeah. Well, just I think when you don't show up to that, people automatically read into that as like, oh, he doesn't care. Right. I mean, it doesn't diminish the value. People just don't. You never walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, so you don't know the kind of stuff they're going through. But you just got to realize that within the week of the Hall of Fame induction, I was probably in about 6 different countries within that week. And you don't work for the UFC anymore. Well, yeah, but still, it's there's a piece of me that feels like yeah. Go ahead. Like I have a responsibility to the fans still. This is true, but you live in China. So. You live all over. You live the other side of the world. Singapore, actually. Singapore. Yeah. All right. So man, you said you had to go in about 40 minutes. We're about 15 over. Do you want to? You got time, or what's up to you here? Yeah, no, I have 11 o'clock meeting I got to be at. So you can edit this, right? Yeah, we'll edit that part out. Yeah. So just whatever you need to do, close it up. Cool. A couple more minutes. And yeah. No worries. So, all right, man. Well, I just want to say thanks, man. Like, I know this is like, what time is it there? You're not on Eastern time. So no, what time are you? It's 11 a.m. here. On what day? So on the next day ahead of you. The day ahead of me, right? So I'm not. Yeah, so I'm probably 13, 14 hours ahead of you. Yeah, so I'm about to be 8:52 p.m. where I am. So we got 14 hours ahead. 14 hours ahead. All right. So but man, I appreciate you reaching out. You didn't have to do this. We've met briefly, and I always appreciate when people, like, especially take the time to tell their story to me, and like, like I said, we don't really know each other. So I like when that happens. So I greatly appreciate your time, man. Well, listen, I'm glad that I called you instead of texting you tonight. We can talk a little bit about that merchandise I want to sell you when we hang up here. I'm about to go to bed, man. You got what you needed. You're suddenly busy. I got what I needed. Yeah, I'm about to go to bed, man. Exactly. No, hey, listen, it's been a pleasure being on, and you got my contacts. So anytime you need me, just reach out, man. For sure, man. The champ, Rich Franklin. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me on. All right, man. You're gonna have a great day, and I'm hopefully gonna have a great night. Yeah, man. Listen, seriously, Eliot, if you ever need anything, you got my contact. I do. Chris and I are solid, so anything I can ever do to help you out, if it's within my power, man, I'd be more than happy to. I really appreciate it, man. Yeah, man. All right. Let's keep in touch. I agree. Let's keep in touch. All right. Take care, buddy. Have a great day. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. You too. All right, man. Bye. Bye. All right, guys, thanks for listening to this episode of The Gospel of Fire. Don't forget to check me out on all of my social media at FireMarshal205. Again, at FireMarshal205. Go to my YouTube channel, FireMarshal01, that is, for YouTube, where you can follow. I'm making these videos 100K strong. That's the goal for the year. I want 100,000 strong listeners to The Gospel of Fire. So I'm trying to make a video a week so that you guys can follow along on my journey of how I go about my day, some things that I talk about, some things that I try to work on for myself. And then finally, don't forget my website, EliotMarshall.com, where you can get up to date with everything that has to do with me personally, The Gospel of Fire. You're going to find all about my book release, also called The Gospel of Fire, February 12th. It will be for sale on Amazon that whole week for 99 cents. So all that information at EliotMarshall.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to my sponsors, Evo Labs and Onnit. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode.